We're all set? Hi, everyone. So great to see so many people joining this panel. I'm Salah. I'm responsible for sustainability at Klarna. For all of you who don't know Klarna, Klarna is a leading payments network and shopping assistant, and we work with 150 million consumers across the globe and with 500,000 retail partners. One aspect of Klarna's sustainability efforts is to help consumers to make more sustainable choices and to contribute to circular economy. And we do that not alone. We do that with amazing partners that we have with us on stage today. And today is also actually a really exciting day for us, not just because this is going to be a really amazing and exciting panel. It's also us announcing a really cool new product update that allows consumers to continuously track their carbon footprint in our app. It also gives consumers the opportunity to filter for third-party sustainability certifications in our app and helps them to explore conscious brands, such as some that we represent here today. But before we get started and we introduce the panel, I would love to do a super quick show of hands. I would love to hear from you whether you ever purchased something secondhand, repaired an item, or rented an item. If you did, raise your hand. This is great. So that's really on par with what we're currently seeing in the industry. There's a lot of businesses picking up on circular economy, and this panel specifically will focus on how tech can be a driver to scale circular economy and conscious shopping. And with that, I'm super excited to introduce you to our cool panel, and we're going to start with Lorenzo. Please tell us who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for Klarna for inviting us and for everyone to be here. My name is Lorenzo Sa. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Clarity AI. We partner with Klarna, and we are a sustainability tech company that basically ensures that we deliver insights on environmental or social issues to investors, to companies, and to consumers. And we pride ourselves for quite a big range of data. We cover 70,000 companies, we cover 400,000 funds, and we cover basically all countries and a big chunk of the public government and local government institutions.
Thank you.
I'm Nam. Nice to be here. Thanks for having us, Klarna. We also partner with Klarna, and I'm one of the founders of a company called Vayu. We help retailers and brands to track and cut their carbon emissions in real time. So we help businesses really understand where their impact is, and we really focus on reduction and optimization. So we see that in two specific ways. One, how can a brand or a retailer reduce their own carbon impact, understand where the carbon sits and where they have optimization potential. And second, we see a lot of possibilities on the consumer-facing side. So how do we enable better choices, which is what our partnership with Klarna is about. How do we show that data to consumers to help them understand the choices that they make and the impact that they have?
And I'm Dunia Von. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Vestiaire Collective. If you don't know Vestiaire Collective, it's a second-hand platform focused on luxury and premium. It's a French company. It started all in Paris 15 years ago, and if they did not invent second-hand, they brought at that time tech into an industry and a sector that was not digitalized, which was the second-hand fashion. And today we are in more than 80 countries, so circularity works.
That's amazing. That's a great use case. Thank you so much, Dunia. Okay, setting the scene, I would love to start with you, Nam. Maybe you could give us a little bit insight into the trends you see with companies picking up on circularity.
So we specifically work with businesses that kind of sell new products, but also a lot with businesses that are circular by nature, that sell secondhand, have repair as part of their kind of ethos. And we see a big range of businesses moving that didn't traditionally do resale, re-commerce, circularity, moving much more into that space. One, because I think there's a lot of growth opportunities. We saw everybody raise their hands when we asked if you'd shop circular. So I think there's an increasing appetite and demand. And I think it's one of the strongest ways we see businesses can meet some of the net zero targets that they've set, some of the science-based targets. So we see it as a big lever for businesses also to kind of meet some of the targets that they're setting. So we see a huge shift in businesses towards circularity for sure.
Okay, moving into consumer trends. Obviously, Vestiaire is a great use case for proving that secondhand marketplaces work. Could you tell us a little bit more, Dunya, about your experience on what do consumers want when it comes to circularity?
Yeah, when you know that shoppers, consumers discover a brand for the first time through second-hand markets, 60% of them, actually you know that it's more than just a trend, like you're creating a loop between first-hand and second-hand. I would say that because of the experience of Vestiaire Collective 15 years ago, it was innovative and maybe a bit strange for a business very linear that just understand goods until the end of the boutique. But today, more than just trend, it's really knowledge that we have on the rest of the circle and the rest of the loop. So what is the value of an item for the second life? What is also what it can brought you to your concrete wallet, but I know that we're going to talk about that. But for us, I think it's more than a trend. We know, and we're not naive, that affordability is still affordability is the first focus for a consumer, but we don't care. We just want people to enter circularity, have the great experience possible on the platform, and then you become more and more aware of sustainability and circularity consumption. Actually, we had a survey this year, and we discovered that 61% of our consumers are using also circularity in different way of consumption. So it's a pretty nice starting to have a more responsible consumption.
I love that. I think it's really interesting because we just recently conducted research around what do consumers want when it comes to sustainability. Do consumers actually really care about sustainability and want to see it? And what about affordability? And we understood very clearly from the research that we have conducted that a lot of consumers want to participate in circularity or in sustainability, but they can't afford it. So secondhand, actually, as you were saying, is maybe a great place to start with. So we learned consumers love it, businesses are doing it. What are investors thinking?
Investors are great. You know, there's this saying that you can look at what's happening in Wall Street to predict what might happen later in Main Street. And you know, I spent the last 15 years in sustainable finance, and just looking at the last 2 years, it's been incredible. I mean, the sustainable finance industry has tripled in 2 years. So we've gone from 30 trillion of assets being invested in sustainable solutions to actually 90 trillion. So that's 2 years. So the general direction is clear, and the benefit of this investment desire is twofold. Because on the one hand, the investors are shifting capital towards more sustainable companies. But on the other hand, those investors that hold companies that might not be sustainable are engaging with those companies to drive that.
Is a mic coming your way?
Okay.
Perfect.
Should I repeat? Did you hear me? Okay. So there's that shift that I say, two things. One is direct shifted investment, and the second is around instead looking at how you engage with companies so that actually they change. And both of those factors are driving a lot, and therefore, from my perspective, that desire or that shift of the circular economy, you know, the circular economy today represents around 9% of the overall economy. By 2030, I'm sure, given this push, that it'll be much higher.
So it seems like, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, because as a scale-up and with investors for ourselves, I can tell that they are more and more demanding on ESG in general, and really it's a big aspect of the report that we're doing to our investors. So definitely we saw the shift even in the last 3 years, I would say.
Yeah, can second that with EU taxonomy, exploring green revenue streams of businesses. That's a great use case. So seems like everything's working, our jobs are done, we can go home. So maybe we can ask ourselves a little bit more, focus a little bit more on the challenges. And I would like to ask you, obviously we're a little bit in an uncertainty when it comes to the macros currently, and we're hearing from cost of living crisis, and I'd love to understand whether you have any kind of insights around, do you think consumers are, because of that, shopping more sustainably or the other way around? Maybe we can start with you now.
Sure. So we're seeing kind of the affordability come in a lot more as a reason that people are shopping more circular. But what's really interesting is we did a big piece of work with Vinted. They're a C2C platform, and there we saw affordability was the reason 47% of people were shopping re-commerce or secondhand, but 20% were still shopping for environmental and social reasons. So while that's a big driver and the largest driver of why people are choosing it, there are people still choosing circular because it's better for the environment and better for people, which is really a strong message that not only is it better for your wallet, but also for the environment, and that kind of win-win is what we're always looking for when it comes to sustainability. So I think that's a big piece as well.
And to give our point of view on this one, so for Vestiaire consumer, for instance, it's the only indicators that increase in the past 3 years. So affordability is still the main driver, obviously, but sustainability is the one that ramping up, and we're super happy because it makes, for me, tangible the marketing, the responsible marketing and the messages that we're giving to our consumer all year long about buy less, buy better, choose secondhand. At some point, it resonates into our community, I would say.
And when we stick a little bit more around the challenges and not just the macros, like is there, for instance, for businesses or for consumers, obviously we say, we just learned 9% of the world is circular. How do we actually scale this? How can tech be a driver? What other challenges do you see? Maybe we want to start with Lorenzo.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting, and you know, this affordability issue is clearly driving, on the one hand, you know, the positive circular solutions that we want. On the other hand, is driving potentially choices that are not necessarily particularly sustainable. Actually, the opposite, fast fashion and all that. And so I think, how do you, and I think this is going back to the investors, how do you make sure that you bring in the big players into this? I think is one of the big challenges. So, you know, there's, you know, let's take Patagonia and H&M, right? Half of my clothing is Patagonia. I love them. But the reality is that Patagonia is 0.09% of the fashion industry. So if they do it, we're not solving the problem on its own. And H&M is then 15 times the actual size of Patagonia. And what I think is an interesting challenge is that H&M is actually, so if you look at the intensity, the carbon intensity of Patagonia, it's actually twice better than that of H&M. But H&M is actually currently set off and said, we're going to reach by 2030 that same level of intensity. And for now, they're actually following through. So if we, as consumers, keep accountable companies to do that, and that by 2030 they achieve that, then H&M will have reduced around 50% of its intensity, you know, its carbon, and therefore it reduced significantly in intensity. And at that point, every single year, the reduction would be 20 times the entire carbon emission of Patagonia, of the entire company.
That's a great example.
So I think that sense of using information, using technology that we are proud of actually working with you to achieve and to give consumer that conscious possibility to make those choices, I think has a great impact on the ultimate consumer and on the goal that we're trying to achieve. You know, the Paris Agreement, the SDG, everything we're talking about this year, I think, you know, this week, I think has that element of empowerment, of individual empowerment that I think is important. And how do you do it with the big players?
You want to add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I really agree with what you said, but we tend to forget policymaker and the role of regulation into that. So talking about H&M, fast fashion brand, or fashion in general, I guess, and circularity especially, I guess that there is too much regulation, still very discriminative for circular business model for like us, for instance, thinking about VAT, thinking about also fighting over consumption and overproduction. I think it's, at some point, the responsibility is also on the policymaker, because we know now what is the effect of fashion on climate and on society, but also on community. So yes, I guess it's what you said, but also a third pillar with policymakers.
I think that's a great discussion. We know from our consumers, 8 out of 10 would love to align their values with the brands they shop with. That kind of speaks to your point that consumers really want that. On the other hand, we know that we're still not there, and it's really hard to get the adoption we want from consumers on that end.
But especially on that, Klarna, for instance, helps also, it's solution like that that will also helps consumer to choose circularity. For instance, I took a look, thanks to that panel, that in our main market, the usage of Klarna increased by 46% the last year. So it means also that people are willing to enter circularity, and they need payment solution for that.
To basically allow consumers to inclusively participate in circular economy and sustainable shopping. Just one anecdote to that, around Earth Week, we launched this campaign helping consumers to understand that if you buy secondhand or more durable products, you may need to invest sometimes into more expensive pieces. For everybody who doesn't know, Vestiaire Collective is a secondhand luxury platform. So being able to allow consumers to participate in that business model and in that side of sustainable consumption is really, really important for us. And we see that picking up a lot.
Maybe just one thing to add on kind of what you were talking about what are we seeing in the space. Also from a data perspective, I think it's been traditionally super hard to understand what is the impact of circularity. So one of the big pieces of work that we're doing with businesses kind of, can we understand how good circularity is? And once we understand that, can we then understand what levers we have to make it better? So if you start with good, that still means you need to improve. And one of the spaces we've seen when it comes to circular or buying secondhand, for example, is the delivery impact is very large. We saw with Vinted, it was 96% of their impact. So that means how we kind of move things around needs to change, and we need to kind of consistently evolve, even when it comes to circularity, because what we want is to continue the kind of evolution to making things better over time as well. So understanding the impact really and what's driving it up is a big part of what we need to be thinking about, I think, when it comes to circularity.
Maybe just taking a little bit forward the challenges you were talking, luxury fashion. I'm interested, do you see differences in the application of circular business models across categories? Maybe Naam, you have a little bit of insight for us.
Yeah, and I think it varies, as you said, a lot by category. So the item that you're buying and the thing that you're then kind of, how durable the product is, how good the quality of the product is, what category it comes from, that all makes a big difference when you calculate and you try to understand. So a handbag and a cotton t-shirt look very different. Swimwear looks very different. So across categories, we see big differences on some being much, much higher drivers of avoided emissions, and avoided emissions is basically how much carbon do you avoid by buying something secondhand. So there we see certain categories really, really have a high amount of avoided emissions, and there with businesses like Vestiaire and other brands, you kind of double down on those categories as well, right? You say handbags or certain luxury jewelry items which you can keep for a long time have much higher avoided emissions, so you kind of focus on buying those as well.
And on another aspect, on brand aspect, sorry if it wasn't my turn, but on a brand aspect, I would say, so not through category, that I'm not saying that, and we're not saying that when you buy Zara, you will buy tomorrow Hermes bag already. But there is this upscale effect that when you're buying first-hand Zara, you can afford second-hand Cézanne, for instance. Sorry, it's a French brand, but I don't have an American one in mind. When you're buying first-hand Cézanne, you can buy second-hand Isabelle Marant, and so on. So at some point, you always invest. And actually, when we banned the fast fashion brand last year on our platform, we thought at some point that people will leave and go on other platforms. And actually, 70% of them did not leave the platform. They just invest in better quality and in better brands in the platform. So they did not leave. It's the fact that we did not give them this choice to maybe continuously buy and buy because it's cheap. And it's even cheaper to buy new or secondhand than repair it, for instance, but more giving educational content and awareness and make them invest in the real stuff that can have a second life, actually.
I'd love for us to move on to the future and the next steps, but maybe just spending one more thought on it. So we've learned a lot or heard about e-commerce a lot. when it comes to repair or rental or other circular models or designing by circularity, is there anything that you feel like is worth sharing in terms of increasing? Because my feeling is that's something we show to consumers. They're interested in refurbished product, remanufactured product. However, with other models like renting, it kind of seems to be harder to adapt. Any insights you want to share before we move on?
If I can just, as a French representative here, actually we just opened a repairability fund. So every consumer that will repair in a group all across the France, in a group of, in a list of repair shop, they will get incentive to do so. So this is the perfect example where regulation can meet circularity and really put the money where their mouth is, we say in English. Okay, and yes, for me, it has to have this click through affordability of money. But yeah, there is great things to do in terms of repairability, reuse, and less waste, actually.
Amazing, awesome.
Yeah. And we see quite different models when it comes to repair, rental, and recom. So on the repair side, I think it depends on how you take it into repair, and I think that has a big impact on the overall emissions of the product. So I think walking or going close by to where you live to then repair has a big impact on kind of how much emissions you avoid. Rental is super specific in terms of the business model and kind of the impact it has and the benefits of it. So it's very much how much you dry clean, how much you wash. There's lots of specifics around rental, and we see quite a wide range of impact when it comes to rental.
Just based on that comment, would you recommend it from an environmental life cycle perspective or not? Do you want to?
Come on, Salah, you know sustainability. The answer is always, it depends. It depends on exactly what you do, how long you wear it, how many times you move it around, and whether you air freight.
That's actually something really cool we're doing together. When Value powers the carbon emissions that are related to the purchases that consumers do, they also provide them with a list of tips on how to treat the product after they make the purchase, because that's ultimately what we want. We want consumers to take care of products so they can live longer. Looking at the backdrop, this is our latest campaign around loved items live longer, and the idea really is to educate consumers around the fact that items can surpass our lifetime, so we should take care of them and pass them on. Looking into the future, what opportunities do you see with regards to tech scaling circular economy? All of you work in tech, the majority of you uses AI. I'm just going to start with you, Lorenzo. What's your view on it?
Well, look, I think this tech and AI are really about solving some of the problems that we have today at scale. And you know, we need to do this, and we need to do it fast, and therefore we need to use the tools that we have to run this at a speed that will get us to drive these goals that are really challenging goals. And as we do that, we need to make sure that we build the trust with the communities we're in. I think one of the things you just mentioned, all this discussion, there's a lot of cultural elements. You know, the fact that you have a screwdriver that you use once and it's sitting in your closet, you use it maybe once every 5 years. If you think of that from a does that make sense? Then all that element of circularity starts connecting. But it's that, hey, did you think of that? That I think none of us really have realized until recently. And so technology, I think, can help with that, and it can help with that in a very good way by providing, you know, for us, it's important bringing that data and therefore empowering the ultimate consumer to drive that change. And to do that, you know, I was thinking about this morning, I went to, think about nutritional labels. And if any of us, I certainly do as I get older, set myself a certain set of calories that I need to achieve in a specific day. You go into shop, you have the nutritional label that once weren't available, and you go there and you got your blueberry muffin, or you got your yogurt, you know, with granola. And okay, once in a while I'll buy my blueberry muffin, I won't hide that. But many times that information that empowers me to achieve something makes a difference and actually makes us start changing the way we individually behave, and therefore how we can change society overall. So in my view, it's about taking AI at scale to empower everyone to actually be part of that change. And I said this the other day as well, this conference is about, has this tag, which is we can, we will. It's not only the regulator-defined answer, it's actually every one of us. And I think the power of AI and technology and the underlying data that can simplify these concepts, I think is where it's going to make us win.
So you help a lot of companies, including Klarna, to say whether a brand is, for instance, acting in an environmentally sustainable way or is aligned with certain social standards and human rights regulations. When can we expect the circularity badge? Is that something you're working on? Is it available?
Well, as you know, first of all, the badges are something we work at, and we're working at different sectors. So one thing I wasn't able to say earlier is I think one of the great thing about the work we are doing together is around looking at badges in a sector which is less known. We're talking about fashion, and fashion is a sector where sustainability is better known. We know more or less what are the initiatives, what are the things we might be looking at. And electronics, which is what we are working together with Klarna, is an actual sector where it's much less known, how good or how bad certain technology and electronics actually around there. So from a badges perspective, I think the first thing is to recognize what we already have. And I think the fact that we're putting a light to sectors that haven't had that light before, I think is already a first step. But I do think that then we need to move forward and looking at circularity, and would love to keep doing that with you, and we're looking into that.
Amazing, thank you so much. All right, being mindful of time, Nam, what is your view on tech accelerating circular economy?
I mean, just to echo what Lorenzo said, I think we see the role of technology in being able to understand the data and be able to quantify impact. So for us, it's super important as businesses scale up these models, as they really understand what are the levers, what are the parts of the thing that make the avoided emissions higher or lower, where can you understand your impact, how can you make it better, and I think we haven't had data like this before. We did the largest piece of work with Vinted on 500 million transactions, surveyed 350,000 users to really understand what does circular fashion mean. We did similar things on off-price. So just trying to understand all of these business models, I think tech and data play a really, really large role in looking at large quantities of information and being able to process them and understand what impact they have. And I think as we then scale this up and run scenarios to understand if I was a business and I added re-commerce 20%, what would that mean for me? So really starting to use technology to be able to understand business decisions better as well.
Awesome. What's your view? Obviously, you're a tech platform.
Yes, obviously, as a tech company, the best experience will also increase the usage of secondhand. The best experience you have on Vestiaire, the higher the chance you're coming back to buy or sell. Obviously, I would say on a fashion perspective, traceability, transparency is key, and technology can help, actually. Digital ID is one of the main answers today that will make the consumer more aware, but also can also reduce the blocker of the time you're spending buying an item. For instance, if you have a digital ID on your jacket, you just take the label, you screen it, and bam, it's on the platform. We did it with Chloe. It works super well, but we need to be hand in hand with brands because they got the information, they got the materials, the condition, and the pictures, and the real story of the item. We're just an enabler for the story to continue. And I think tech is a key to answer a big challenge in fashion, especially.
I love that. I love that collaboration idea and the idea, and I think that's going to enable a lot of us to tap further into circularity.
Time, you know?
We're so well on time. I'm going to ask you 1 minute left, a call to action. Quickly, every one of you, what would you like to share for people to do after this panel?
I would just say demand and use the data of the things you want or have to actually be part of your own destiny and the choices you make and the change we want.
I think for us, it's, as we said, we know circular fashion or circular business models are better. So go out there and use them more. We saw the show of hands. Everyone seems to be doing it, but we need much more, and we need tools like Klarna and different people doing that to make it visible to customers as well, so you can understand the impact.
And obviously, because now US will be our best market, biggest market, just try Vestiaire Collective, I would say.
I love that. Amazing. I want to say thank you so much to all of you for coming today and for sharing your experience around tech and circularity. And I want to tell all of you to go and check out our circularity campaign, our amazing conscious shopping features on klarna.com/sustainability. Thank you so much for listening in.